So, Deborah, thank you for joining us. And for those of you who don't know Deborah so well, just sort of a few introductory words. She's a natural beekeeper, an international honeybee educator, speaker, mentor, advocate, artist, writer. She's been to Turkey. She's been in all sorts of places around the world. She's the founder of the Holy Bee Press, the vice president of the Center for Honeybee Research, the founder of the Honeybee Project, a bee mentor at Hamatsa, which is an indigenous learning center in New Mexico. She's the editor of an ongoing series of articles about honeybees and natural beekeeping. She's on the steering committee of Bee City, USA. She received her master beekeeping certificate in 2010. She's the faculty founder of the College of Melisage Center for Sacred Beekeeping in Ashland, Oregon, and was chosen as one of the heroes of Asheville, North Carolina in 2014. She also created the online series, The Sacred Path of Bee, for bee appreciators worldwide. She mentors new beekeepers in their yards by email, Skype, and phone, and she consults and collaborates with fellow artists on honeybee-related projects. She lives in the mountains of western North Carolina outside of Asheville with her husband, Joe, her cat, Habla, and millions of honeybees. Hope I got that right, Deborah. And just before we get into our conversation, I just want to show people what your website looks like in case they want to go there later. So, okay, here we go. So this is the Honeybee Press. There's all sorts of stuff here, including the Sacred Path of Bee. So, I recommend, if you're interested in bees and you haven't been there, I recommend checking that out. So, Deborah,
all right.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm so honored by already hearing everybody that's part of this group, because there's obviously a bee-ish call amongst us. And it's a beautiful thing for me to behold.
So, you know, as I'm sort of reading this intro to you, I want to ask you the first honest question that comes to my mind, which is, how on earth do you do all that? I mean, how do you sort of, you know, work with your time and your life to be involved in all these ways and still with your own hive back home?
Well, a lot of those are things I have done. What I was vice president of, I've now on the board of. I've Tai Chi'd things over time. And one of the things that the bees have taught me in managing my time is how to just do less of some things, because I'm a little bit of a too much woman, have been historically. And so I've learned to come to balance much more. So a lot of those things are, they're a tapered version of what they were.
Can you tell us about your bees, you know, your hive now, and how that sort of came together?
You mean in terms of bees coming into my life, or?
Just the actual bees, or bees coming into your life, however you want to approach that.
Well, bees themselves, I have, like Wendy, I have had an interest in the natural world, plants and animals, for all my life, especially animals, probably, and birds. And I've appreciated bees, but they came into my life, like many of the things in my life, with the big non-plan, kind of what the benevolent universe had planned, but not anything to do with what I had particularly planned. But they came into my life after a health crash. I was doing documentary films for years, and I had a great time, but I completely burnt out, and I took a sabbatical for 6 months that turned into the rest of my life. And in that 6 months, I ended up in some different countries, but also central to that, I did a personal pilgrimage to Hopi. And I was going to pay my respects to the family of Thomas Banyaka, who was a very pivotal elder who was kind of a free-range chicken elder, going around the world literally at the time, speaking pieces of the Hopi prophecy. And his particular part was to do with women. And I met him in Santa Fe, New Mexico, when I lived there. And I'd heard he passed, so I felt a call to go to Hopi, had never been there, to pay my respect. And I lived around the corner from a man who had honey, and I wanted to bring them a gift. And I wasn't a beekeeper at the time. So I had all these jars of honey, and I literally just, drove there in a couple of 2-3 days, found my way to the door of his son, knocked on the door, and I said, I'm Deborah Roberts from North Carolina, and you don't know me, but I have infinite respect for your father. And it's actually his wife that came to the door, and I said, may I give you a gift? And then I'm going to go home. And she said, sure. And I brought and gifted them the honey. And she said, I was just telling my husband I was about to go to the store because we'd run out of honey. So there was this kind of cosmic connecting there. And I feel like that's the moment where bees kind of went under my radar into the heart of my life. And a couple of months later, I saw a sign for bee school in Asheville, which I'd never planned to do. But when I did it, you know how it is when you fall in love with somebody. I can remember the moment I fell in love with my husband. It was like that. It was like, oh, my heart. And it was like all of a sudden millions of beings had just kind of colonized my heart and just changed my path forever. I let go of everything else and just went to the bees. So
it sounds like that was meant to be.
Yes.
Yeah. So what did you do? How did you invite the bees to come to your house after that?
Well, after coming out of bee school, I realized there was like so much to know. And I realized that one colony of Italian bees, which is mostly what we have in the US, could be like, 50 or 60,000 beings. And I was overwhelmed with a sense of responsibility. So I found a man who allowed me to apprentice with him for years. I went through the bee club roster, and, he was underseas, thank goodness. And he lived relatively near me. Well, he ended up being the kind of the main quiet, off the radar, organic beekeeper in our area. Because at the year I started, you almost felt like it was almost illegal not to use chemicals on your bees. And I was like, well, I can't do that, So I worked with him for a year and worked my butt off, sweat, had a deliriously happy time, learned a lot. And then I just went on to have bees non-commercially, and I started to get asked to teach and travel, and ending up here today.
Awesome. So you talk about the sacred path of bees.
Yeah.
By the way, I see that our friend James Ofu has joined us from Ivory Coast. Welcome, Ofu. It's good to see you. Can you hear us? Anyway, Ofu is there. He's been there.
Good.
Welcome. So what do you mean by the sacred path of bees? What is it?
It's interesting. When you're a beekeeper, I know some of you are and some of you aren't, and I don't think it's important that it's everybody's path. I think bee appreciation is really the thing. But when I'm in my bee yard, which is really kind of now what I would call my sanctuary, one of the main places that I spend time when I'm home, when you enter the space of bees, especially as a beekeeper, because you're frequently doing that, whether you're in a hive or not, they soon, they teach you over the years that if you're calm, you're focused, you're present, you're not multitasking, you're slow and kind of liquid moving, you're respectful, you're grateful, all of these things, you're not angry, you kind of leave that at the gate if you got that going on that day. All of these things contribute to a much more successful and real relationship with bees. And for me, I'm in my yard every day, rain, shine, snow. So you have this, it's a practice, I realize. You're this way day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. And it's one day I realized it was a practice and it was changing me, and that all of these feelings, if I could even bring more consciousness to that, not just be calm, but just go, okay, catch myself at the sanctuary gate and go, okay, let me collect myself and be the best that I can be, and, be all these different ways and bring consciousness even more to that, that I realized it was a practice and that it was changing me and that they were changing me. And from that point, it was the sacredness of the relationship just welled up and out, and feelings of reverence and benevolence and all of those lovely things were there. And that's when I realized also this practice is no different from any lineage, any spiritual tradition that also values these same things. And so this other that was a bee became a sacred relationship, which I think is the opportunity for, with any living thing, really. For me, it just happens to be particularly bees.
So it sounds like you're saying that the bees respond to the consciousness that you bring to them.
Yes, and vice versa. I'd say I'm not like making them humans. They're definitely their species, I'm definitely mine. But there is a place, we are interconnected. And that interconnectedness for me is very awake and alive when I'm around bees, because there's a lot of them and they all know what they're doing and they're very purposeful. And I'm the one who realizes when I'm not. I can kind of be here or scattered, or they're on it, every day of their lives. And there's so many beautiful things that happen around them. And so I can recalibrate myself by bringing my best to them. And somehow that's even more tuned up in their presence. And that can happen in a garden or anywhere. It doesn't have to be for beekeepers. It can be the sheer, presence with an other, wherever that can happen.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is that any of us can do that in relation to other living beings, that the same kind of dynamic is at work, yeah?
Yes, and I think it's again, it's not important to have bees. This rising bee appreciation is adding to the collective sort of medicine for a set of beings that are really suffering a lot right now. And I think in the way that I look at the history of what's going on, around 2006, there was this, colony collapse disorder. Was that naming happened for a lot of mysterious things and a lot of bee death. And we're still kind of, suffering from that. But the specifics of what that is could mean a lot of different things. And as a result, more women stepped forward into beekeeping than in the whole history of humans and bees. And there have been a lot of lovely men. And this is a little bit stereotypical, but there, it might be more that the man was keeping bees and the wife helped with the honey and stuff like that. Whereas now there's been a flood worldwide of women stepping towards bees with, like myself, not ever having it be a plan, and that the impulse is compassionate. It has nothing to do with commerce. It's absolutely nothing to do with bees as livestock, but it's to do with beings who are struggling, who need to be well and have the right to be well. And so this impulse is starting to change the face of beekeeping, which of course changes the face of life itself. And if a person is in that wave of appreciation, whether they have bees or not, that anybody can be part of that.
What a fascinating part of the story of the feminine entering into the leadership in beekeeping. One of the things you talk about is hello, Ofu.
Call on me.
Wait, maybe I better mute.
Yes.
Ofu.
How are you?
Oh, good to see you.
Yes.
Are you talking to us?
Yes. Come on. Yeah.
Good.
I'm here with my kids.
Oh, hi there.
Mommy.
Okay. Welcome and thank you. Okay.
New Year.
Okay. Deborah, one of the things you talk about is the difference between commercial beekeeping and the kind of beekeeping that you do. Can you tell us a little bit like that? What's, briefly, what's commercial beekeeping? What's the kind of beekeeping you do?
Well, the kind of beekeeping that I do, and a lot of people I know do, would be, we're all struggling for language, but kind of my current language and the language of some of my compadres would be natural, compassionate beekeeping. Beekeeping that's bee-centric. It's for the purpose of supporting this beautiful life form to be the best, to flourish the best that it can. And bees are brilliant. They know how to do that, but they need a lot of support from we humans who are, I think, the source of, on the days of our poorer choices, and the environment is full of our poorer choices. That's what they're dealing with. So in the end, beekeeping is really about human relationship with humans and our own relationship with our own choices and thoughts. I think in the end, that's the ultimate activism, because the bees go on doing what they're doing until they can't do it anymore. And the statistics have been really appalling over these last years of who's making it and who isn't. And in America, one of the big distinctions, it's happening in other countries, people move their bees around, but in America, one of the big annual events begins around December, where over half the bees in the United States go to holding yards in California, where it's warmer, and the bees are they're sort of tricked into it's spring now, even though they've come from a lot of wintry places. They're fed a lot of high fructose corn syrup, which is like trying to raise healthy children on liquefied Twinkies, in my opinion. And so that the queens will lay, and then the populations will build up like they naturally would do in the spring, so that they're ready to be placed in the almond orchard, which is the first monoforest crop that happens the bloom starts around Valentine's Day for 10 days to 2 weeks. And then from there, they're moved to a variety of, call it apples, pears, berries. They for months, they can be migrating. And this is like a huge elephant in the room of the United States, apiculture and agriculture. And almonds are an even more lucrative business than wine in California. So there's brokers and investments and, investors and all sorts of things. And if you're a serious beekeeper, as in serious, want to raise your kids and send them to college, doing that profession, you probably will be sending your hives. So I have an article on that in Holy Bee Press called "The High Cost of Almonds for Bees." So in this country especially, but it does go on in other places, we're putting this huge demand on a creature that's already by its very nature inspires the expression "busy as a bee." It's brutal, and it's on top of a lot of environmental stresses that are already compromising their health. So there's a lot of us that are rising up with an intent to help and be with bees, and to pay attention to what that means, really even questioning what we assume our basic practices are without any commercial intent whatsoever, and to not treat them as livestock, but to treat them as beings who are worthy of just being well in this life the same time as we are.
Wow, that opens on to a very big topic. I think we could probably spend the next 4 or 5 hours easily on it. But thank you for that overview, really, of what's at stake here and what you're doing. When I follow up with each of you on this circle, I want to make sure we include some links for more depth. So Deborah, maybe you and I can work that out of what I can send people. Before we get into the dialogue, there's just one more place I want to go here. I want to share a screen with those of you who are on the video here, and let's see, where are we? Okay, here we go. So we first came into you in July when we had this owl circle with Kamiar and Sita. But I want to show you this picture here.
Yeah.
Here is, let's see if I can get this, right? Here we are it's a Seymour community in Turkey. And there you are, Deborah, in the back. It looks like you're all dressed as bees.
Yes.
Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yes, this is one of my ways of infiltrating the world for Be Good. I bring these little headbands with pipe cleaners, like you can find in a kids section of an art store, and people can make their own. And I brought them as gifts to this the Samor gathering last March, where I was kindly invited by Kamiar, and everyone ended up wearing them a lot, which was lovely. These are some amongst many, but some of the great loves of my life are who you're looking at right here.
Awesome.